and we are up and running. It is the first full day of spring in the Northern Hemisphere. So Barrett and I are on the same page on that aspect of it, but he's on the other side of the world. How are things in Germany this morning, Barrett?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. You know, because we're in the northern hemisphere, our toilets still flush in the same direction, so we got that going.
Yes, well, and as soon as you cross that equator, you encounter a whole different paradigm. I'm wondering if you park yourself on the equator, if your toilet wouldn't flush at all.
It probably just backs up.
Right. Something to be wary of if you're out in the middle of the ocean in your super yacht. You don't want to park it on the equator, or you'll have all sorts of conundrums to deal with.
Yeah, it's a shitty situation.
It could be. It definitely could be. But, Betsy DeVois has, I guess, a couple of yachts, but her one main yacht that she probably spends 2 days a year on is huge enough to almost rival Queen Elizabeth. It's just a massive, massive boat. And you got to wonder, if they even take them out into the ocean or if they just use it as a stage to invite people over and have cocktails on the deck.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. There's a whole other world out there.
And it's one that, unfortunately, a lot of us are tempted to pursue or envy or attack, and actually, none of it's real.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of see a certain number of people kind of going after money, in the world. In the spiritual community, there's a lot of that too, looking for financial abundance. And my attitude's kind of like, yeah, I'm okay with that. But what I really want is to wake up. So whatever the most direct path to that is, if I'm supposed to have, 10 million bucks in order to help me realize that none of it's real, then sure. But if not, I'm okay with that too.
Yeah, well, it is a bizarre situation, how we get trapped in the ego drives. And the reality is that, once you start acquiring all this stuff, it becomes an unending appetite.
Hmm.
And it really makes your life very trivial when you stop and step back and take a look at it.
Yeah, yeah. And so much of our work with the course is realizing that things of the world will never make us truly happy. Whether it's a relationship, whether it's a bank account, whether it's a yacht, a car, a house, a job, these things that we're always searching after and thinking, once I get that, then things will be good. Well, the problem is all of these things, no matter how seemingly permanent they all end. And ultimately, we're not worthy of things that end. I mean, it seems kind of bold to say that, but the truth of what we are is only worthy of what is eternal. And the only thing that is eternal is divine love. So, I mean, again, it doesn't matter. We can do all the things in the world. We can make the wealth and have a lot of things here, but it's really, if it becomes a temptation to believe that there's happiness in any of those things, then that's where our healing lies. That's where our work is, to realize it's never been there at all.
That's very true. And, it's not a hard process. It's only our resistance that creates so much chaos and makes it so difficult for us. But uh, I was looking at this one passage and this morning, chapter 2, and it says here in the 5th paragraph, nothing and everything cannot coexist. To believe in one is to deny the other. Fear is really nothing, and love is everything. Whenever light enters darkness, the darkness is abolished. And of course, when you enter into this covetousness and this desire to own and the need to possess, it's all an illusion. And even though you think you own it, you suddenly slide into that highly vulnerable place where it owns you.
Yeah. You know, whenever I talk about this topic in A Course in Miracles, it reminds me of a Course teacher, Reverend Tony Senf, who's been leading Course communities in Ohio and the Cleveland area for a number of years. And before he was in Cleveland, he was in Southern California, and he was really big into the law of attraction initially. So he was using it, and he was one of the somewhat small percentage of people that law of attraction works for. And he got all the stuff, right? He had the house right on the ocean front. He had the top end motorcycles and cars and all this stuff. But what he realized is that none of that really made him happy. What he really wanted was to wake up. He wanted to wake up to the truth of what he was. And he let almost all that go. And it changed his life, but it also deepened his path and his purpose. And I find that a pretty inspiring example for all the people who are looking to get all the goodies in the world, to see someone who got them all and then said, that's not it. That's not it. I think it's a helpful lesson so that not everyone has to try to experience it for themselves.
Well, and a lot of times you get all of the things that you've got on your need list, your desire list, and then, your wife divorces you and your kids abandon you. And so there's always this background going on of self-loathing instead of self-loving.
Yeah.
And that's the distraction here, is that all of this stuff is designed to keep us mesmerized, to keep us under this stupor. And we are looking at, a world that doesn't really exist except in our own mind, and failing to realize that the one thing that's missing is a sense of love. And that's really at the foundation of every other process that could go on in your life. Without love, you may have all of these grandiose or this grandiosity of acquisition, but you're still like the emperor with no clothes.
Yeah, and on a cold day, that's really no fun. It's a little drafty down there.
Now it's spring here in Chicago, so bouncing between 20 degrees and 50 degrees.
Yeah. Well, it's a lot like that here too. Although I think tomorrow it's supposed to be up into the 60s, which really I should say it's supposed to be 18 degrees for those who know Celsius. So.
And that's a whole other ball of wax, isn't it?
Definitely.
We can't agree on anything when you really stop and ponder it.
Well, this conversation is actually the perfect lead-in to the section that I was reading beforehand, which is in chapter 15, section 7. This is the section entitled The Needless Sacrifice. And the needless sacrifice is our willingness to give up love in exchange for all of the things that the ego offers to us. And he says, the ego embarks on an endless, unrewarding chain of special relationships. So a special relationship is anything where we think something outside of us is going to make us happy. So again, like we said, relationships, things in the world, having a certain amount of money, anything else that you think is going to make you happy is a special relationship you have with that thing. So, and thus it embarks on an endless, unrewarding chain of special relationships, forged out of anger and dedicated to but one insane belief, that the more anger you invest outside yourself, the safer you become. So again, we see the insanity here, that we don't always see this is what we're doing. We think we're just living our lives and trying to find happiness in however we can the best. But once we get that there's really a kind of a, I don't know, a dark undertone to all of these efforts, we start to see, maybe I don't want to do it this way anymore. Maybe I want to let go of the ego's hand and stop trying to kind of find that next special relationship, and again shift into the holy relationship, which is always our relationship as being one with God, because that really is the answer. It's the answer to all of our problems, and it's what we're all aiming for. So we're doing it together.
Absolutely. And, you skip down a little bit further and it points out suffering and sacrifice are the gifts with which the ego would bless all unions. And those who are united at its altar accept suffering and sacrifice as a price of union. And, really, you have to look at what's going on here. When we're talking about this, the ego has an agenda. And so if that agenda cannot be accomplished in full, the ego will sacrifice a certain element of that agenda and then make it very clear that it expects an equal amount of sacrifice from your partner. And that starts off with a tone of diminishing. And as you continue to diminish, both parties in the relationship end up in a state of ongoing frustration and an impossibility to have any kind of feeling of true love. There's no give and play that we normally experience in love, because everybody is counting their pennies and saying, well, I had to give up 57 cents for you, and you've only given up 45 cents for me. And it is really evil when you stop and think about it.
Yeah, exactly. The ego's world is a zero-sum world. If I'm going to win, somebody has to lose. And if somebody else is going to win, then I have to lose. This is the real intense version of it. Jesus talks about a bit. I believe it's in the Manual for Teachers, where he says, this angry God that we think kind of rules this insane world, says kill or be killed. And there's this feeling of we see it in this idea of survival of the fittest, right? Those that are weak will be sort of filtered out. It's a very cruel and punishing kind of energy, and it doesn't take too deep of a look for us to find it in our politics, in our interpersonal relationships, in the way businesses operate in this world, and in so many other categories too. It's really just deeply ingrained in this whole dualistic world that we're in. The good news is that our truth is not really in this world. Jesus says, I believe it's in one of the workbook lessons, he says you're not really at home here. You're in exile from your truth, and it's a sad and kind of desperate place. He calls this world a place where starved and thirsty creatures come to die. Well, that's pretty grim. But if we really look honestly at what happens here, this is what happens. And we don't want to sugarcoat it. We don't want to pretend it's not unfolding. We want to look it straight in the eye and say, the truth of what I am is worthy of more than this, and always has been. And it helps us to set down our attachment to the world and come to our real birthright, which is the love of that divine truth that is always there for us.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's or rhetoric like that could almost become a song lyric for a heavy metal band. You know, some of these people out here love the anger and the angst. So we have to be conscious of what it is that we are attracted to, whether it's consciously attracted or unconsciously attracted. And once we start looking at these things and questioning our tastes and our desires and our needs, we start to discover there's a whole part of our life that has been invisible, that we've been oblivious to. And that's, you know, again, how clever the ego is that it's pulling this stuff off right in front of you and you're not aware of it. It says, whenever you are angry, you can be sure that you have formed a special relationship which the ego has blessed. For anger is its blessing. Anger takes many forms, but it cannot long deceive those who will learn that love brings no guilt at all. And what brings guilt cannot be love and must be anger. All anger is nothing more than an attempt to make someone feel guilty. And this attempt is the only basis the ego accepts for special relationships. So when you start feeling like you have to repress a little bit of anger here, a twinge of resentment there, then you're not being fully honest with yourself about the nature of the relationship you're in. And if the relationship you are in is one that is guilt-free, it will not have any tinges of anger affecting it. And I see a lot of this with people that have been together for 20, 30, 40 years. There is this wall of hostility that once it is built, neither party is willing to address the idea of disassembling that wall. They live with their prejudices, they live with their anger, they live with their frustration because they're still getting enough of their needs met. And that's, you know, physical needs more likely than emotional needs. So then it becomes a very dark and gray experience being in a relationship. And, you know, you can look around and just figure it out, because you know people who are on both sides of the coin, ones who have an ego-based relationship and others who are basing the relationship on mutual respect and a identity formed in the presence of God.
Yeah, yeah. And again, all of us have these types of special relationships, ways that we sort of, I don't know, unconsciously sometimes, but in some way we push against people, or we try to control other people, or we think we know what's best for other people. It's a very kind of addictive way of being, and to really challenge it, to bring it into the light, and to start to question, is this what I want? Is much like breaking an addiction. It's not always easy, right? Oftentimes, to break an addiction, it's a lot of work. And that's how this feels for a lot of people too, is to do this sort of inner work. It's work, you know. There's a whole book called The Workbook. You have to work at it. But it's okay, right? Because doing the work brings us to the experience we want. And that experience, again, is an experience free from fear, free from guilt, free from anger and judgment. And, you know, I think we all really want that. I remember hearing the Dalai Lama talk about people once, and he said, you know, regardless of what someone's religion is, or even if they don't have a religion at all humans want the same thing. All humans want to be happy. And it was just so simple, but it was so profound. And I thought, yeah, that's really it. He hit the nail on the head with that one. It's so clear And it really unites us rather than divides us. It shows how we are all similar, even if we're going about that desire for happiness in very, very different ways. We all have at the core this desire to be happy and to be peaceful and to be loving. We just need to kind of notice the clouds and the shadows and start kind of clearing them out from in front of the light, so that we can let it shine forward more and more.
And to be willing to bring things up.
Mm.
Communication really is the key to discovering what your relationship is based on and how valid it actually is.
Mm.
So if you are not being transparent, if you're not naked with each other on the level of communication, you can have a lot of fun with your bodies, but the truth is you'll never feel that sense of enrichment and fulfillment.
Mm.
So we have to be willing to let down all of our veils and all of our guards and all of our illusions and just be true to each other in the moment. And once that level of communication is established, then some amazing things can actually start to unfold in a relationship.
Yeah, yeah, and this next paragraph fits right into what we're saying here. It starts by saying the Holy Spirit cannot teach through fear. So this is really, really helpful to know that when we go to our inner teacher, he'll never teach through fear. So if we're having fearful inner thoughts, we know they're not coming from our divine truth. So, and he says at the end of this paragraph, the union of bodies thus becomes the way in which they would keep minds apart. So as you were just saying, Chris, you can have try to have togetherness one body to another, but it actually serves to reinforce separateness. And he finishes to say, for bodies cannot forgive. They can only do as the mind directs, right? So where does forgiveness happen if not in the body? It happens in the mind. It's always in the mind that we can forgive. It's always in the mind that we can choose love. Bodies, as he said, just do what the mind directs. So if we're thinking thoughts of love and kindness, our body is naturally going to take action, speak words of love and kindness. If we're thinking thoughts of fear and judgment, then our body's going to act out of fear and speak out of judgment. And what we want to do is just really start noticing how we do this, because it says in the very beginning of the text that miracles, which is forgiveness, miracles are habits. But the ego is a habit too. The ego is the bad habit that we want to practice breaking. But as any of us who've had bad habits know, it's not always easy, and it doesn't always stick the first time. We need to kind of stick with it to kind of break through that energy that's been hanging around and come back into the energy that is our truth. So that's really what we're doing as we keep practicing these ideas more and more. We're reinforcing what is true, which is love, and we're melting away our attachment or our addiction to fear and suffering.
Absolutely. So it is the arrival of spring on a metaphysical level and on a very physical level in our environment. It says, and it's such an easy thing. That's the thing that becomes the real issue, is that we complicate it. But the truth is, all of this is very, very easy. Mm-hmm. It's just a matter of letting go. Mm-hmm. And if we can learn how to do that, then we're going to transcend all of our limitations without any effort.
Yeah. I mean, we have to stick with it, but it's only, like you said earlier, it's only our resistance to choosing love that makes it seem hard at times. But it is just a choice. It's always just a choice. And Jesus actually says over and over through the course that this is a simple course. It's the ego that makes it seem complicated. It's the ego that makes it seem challenging. But the good news is that, again, we all can make a choice, and we all can make a different choice. And it's really why the text ends with the section, choose once again, because that's really at the heart of what Jesus is teaching us in A Course in Miracles. He's teaching us to choose again, to realize when we have been holding the ego's hand that it hurts us and we don't want to keep doing it, and we don't have to. That his hand is outstretched to us and is just waiting for us to take it. So the question to each of us, anyone watching this video right now, is, are you willing to take his hand? Are you willing right now in this moment to let go of some old grievance or some old fear and to step into the peace of love in this moment?
That's very much a fact. And well, the clock is ticking, and you are running around in Europe there, having a grand adventure. Is there anything that we should be aware of that you got on the agenda here?
Yeah, I'll just share about a few upcoming events. Charlie and I have another good news. While I'm over here in Germany, he's projecting my image onto a big projector screen, so I'll kind of be there, and for people online could obviously join in that way too. And then in June, I am leading a retreat called Clearing the Way for Spirit. It's a weekend healing retreat. It's going to be up in Wisconsin while I'm back in town, back in the United States. It's June 14th to 16th, Friday afternoon to Sunday after lunch. And it's really going to be beautiful. We'll be talking about a number of the ideas in A Course in Miracles. We'll be talking about past lives, which I'm really big into, and clearing through your energy body. So really just focusing on all of this stuff in order to come more fully into your happiness, into your truth, into your peace. So you can find all the details about both of those events and everything else I'm doing at my website, which is barretthedeen.com. That's BarrettHedeen.com. So yeah, all kinds of good stuff is coming. Those sprouts are coming up through the snow.
Yes. And of course, that mid part of June is when the strawberries are coming in. So if you're up in Wisconsin and that timeline, you're going to have strawberries all over the place, and it's going to be lovely.
Yeah, that sounds good. Sounds good. I love making homemade strawberry jam, so maybe this will be a year that I do some of that. So
yeah, that would be very much a gift to you and those around you.
Yeah.
Well, we will reconvene in 2 weeks, and in the interim, hopefully people will get out there and share the love, spread it around, and we'll all be blessed by that.
Beautiful. I look forward to it. Have a great couple of weeks, and enjoy spring as it keeps sprungen.
Yes, springing, the springing spring. Take care.
All right. Bye, man.
Bye.